The Doug Rising Show. Well, the Doug Rising Show. And I'm Doug Rice. Okay. Hey, it's Tuesday. Good morning. Doug Rice, 7 a.m. in the morning on the 24th of October. How you doing? Boy, I tell you, this is the longest 24 hours to an invasion I have ever seen. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. Seems to me like there's a little hesitance rolling through the IDF. You know, they're quick to light up everything from the air, the tanks, the planes. Boy, when it comes to going in, when it comes to actually marching your ass into Gaza, I don't know. But I've been waiting for the show. How you doing, folks? Welcome to the Doug Rice Show. What a fiasco. What is going on? And, today's topic is so appropriate. I got to tell you, I'm excited because it's all about dominion, right? It's all about where you belong, where you come from, where you hail from, where your folks are from. Where do you come from? What's your dominion? What is your space? What is your land? Because this is going to be an apropos subject nearly at hand. And I'll tell you why. Everybody's going home. It's so interesting to hear, oppressors in this country as Negroes talk about our second exodus. So many of them so quick to open the door to a house they had no goddamn place in building and telling us that we can go. I always let those same oppressors know that they too will pack their goddamn bags because they're going home as well. It's a very satisfying thing to tell. All right, so how's everybody doing this morning? Listen, thank you for being here. Let me say that off top. Of course, I'm going to continue to do this and probably I won't stop. Only because it's in me to do this. I'm driven to do this thing every day. Driven to say the things that I say. And today is no different. Yesterday we covered chapter 5 in this book, Who is Esau-Edom? We uncovered some gnarly stuff, did we not? Now, let me go ahead and set the table so that you guys know. I am not a spiritual advisor on the Doug Rice Show. I'm just a guy that talks and talks and talks. And I've been doing that for 35 years, okay? If you want spiritual nourishment, I always encourage you to go to T.I. Ministries or Dante Fortson. Those are the two individuals that, I look to when I want to be spiritually fed. This is about information. You see, I am an information junkie. I just have to have all the information, as much knowledge, as much info as possible, because I'm trying to put together the sphere of completeness, the knowledge, you know what I mean? Everybody's trying to do it. Subconsciously, unconsciously, we are all trying to put it together, right? And I put it together with you. That's how I do. I put it together with you on the Doug Rice Show. You know what I try to do, as Antoine Anderson always says, I bring receipts. And usually those receipts are printed out by the very individuals whom I scream and shout. And let's take this into consideration as I present it to the Negro Nation. This written by Charles A. Weisman. Now, it doesn't come closer from the horse's mouth than Charles A. Weisman about who is Esau and Edom. I'm not going to question this man's expertise in that area. If you like this show, if you like this program, please show your support and use the giving links below. We have a new patron. We have, of course, the Cash App, The Doug Rice Show. Like, subscribe, and share. Please comment in the chat room right there. I do not read the chat because I can't do two things at the same time. I can't focus on what you're saying and focus on my rhyme. That's just the truth. We know this. All right. So let's get to it, shall we? Chapter 5 was amazing. Chapter 6 is going to be phasing. Trust this. Dominion of Esau. The Dominion of Esau. Now, I don't read ahead. Not usually. I kind of, just allow it to come to me as it comes to you. Yesterday, we talked about world conflict and adversity. We talked about a lot of things these folks do regarding the Talmud. We itemized the contrasting religious beliefs of Christianity and Judaism in comparison between the Talmud and the Bible, and we were disgusted. If you didn't get a chance to look at yesterday's offering, I advise you go, because it was an interesting day on the Doug Rice Show. We really exposed some mess, I got to tell you, and that's no jest. Now, we're going to move forward to chapter 6, the Dominion of Esau, and bring this in the mix. So, giving you an overview of what we do on the Doug Rice Show, I just read it. I want you to enjoy how it's read. I try to read it as well as possible. We need to get the gist of what's happening. We need to make sure we haven't missed anything, because as it boils over in the land we all hail from, you can understand it'll be a hell of a maelstrom. Well, I just wanted to do that. Just get over it. Here we go. The Dominion of Esau on the Doug Rice Show. Like, subscribe, share, give, and there it is right there. Jacob's blessing of dominion. Okay, so dominion. We're going to get this shook out here. When Rebekah was pregnant and carrying Esau and Jacob in her womb, she was informed by God of the fate of the two children, telling her that the elder shall serve the younger. We find that in Genesis 25:23. At that time, such a thing as the younger child being over the elder was unheard of. And Rebekah, no doubt, kept this revelation to herself. Esau was the firstborn or elder son, and thus had the birthright, which he later sold to Jacob, the younger son. Later, Jacob had gotten Isaac to officially give him the blessings that go along with the birthright. And it was said of Jacob, "Let people serve thee, the nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren, and let thy mother's son bow down to thee. Cursed be everyone that curses thee, and blessed be he that blesses thee." Jacob was thus to have rule and dominion over other people or races, and to be in a dominant position over other nations. Out of Jacob shall come he that shall have dominion. Now that's pretty cut and dry. We are Jacob. And before we continue, just to give you a little bit of a mental sinew to stretch upon, remember, we're going to eat the meat, spit out the bone, leave what you don't believe alone. When they talk about Jacob, they know, they think they're talking about white folks. So in our minds, we know our kind. When they're talking about Jacob, they're talking about us. All right, so just ease your mind as we go through this. Thus, this blessing belonged to the inheritor of the Adam, Noah, Abraham lineage, Negroes, us, as Adam was to have dominion over all the earth and dominion over every living thing that moves upon the earth. Rebekah, knowing Jacob's destiny through God's revelation, favored Jacob over Esau and aided Jacob in securing his rightful blessings from Isaac. So this is a long fought war between two brothers that has culminated in what we see today. Throughout history, the white European race has easily ruled over all other races and have surpassed them in technology and industry, while none have been able to subdue them. This dominance of the white race over others is an earmark of the blessings of the birthright. Again, don't get in your feelings, folks. This is written by a white man. You need to disseminate this information the best way that you can. I'm simply reading it. The Lord shall cause thine enemies that rise up against thee to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way and flee before thee 7 ways. And the Lord shall make you the head and not the tail, and you shall be above only, and you shall not be beneath. If that you hearken unto the commandments of the Lord thy God, which I command you this day to observe and to do them. And of course, European ideology and thought process always attempt to apply the blessings of God to themselves. We, as holy Negroes that are set apart, God's special possession, understand when we read through regression the true sentiment and meaning of what the scripture is gleaning. So don't get in your feelings. Let's just keep reading. It's all right. All right, so what race of people easily rule over all other people? Several centuries ago, when our, white ancestors were coming into the light of God's word and the Reformation was sweeping Europe, their Anglo-Saxon people began to go to other continents. Now, as you can see, this is written in the sleight of hand against us and towards them. Simply rearrange the information and then you'll comprehend very easily. There are many cases in history where a handful of white European people have conquered or put to flight a great multitude of the colored races. At one time, Britain had control of all of India with less than 30,000 soldiers. When Attila the Hun, known as the Scourge of God, has subjugated all of Asia, he decided to extend his barbaric dominion to the west into Gaul. The Visigoths, under the king Theodoric, defeated the Huns in the Battle of Chalons. During the settling of South Africa by the British and Dutch, a group of some 460 colonists were encircled by 30,000 Zulu warriors. Listen to this brag. The Afrikaner colonists prayed and made covenant with God, asking him to give our enemy into our hands that we might be victorious over him. At the end of the historic battle of blood, not a single colonist was injured, but the Zulus lost 12,000. Now, understand, folks, if you read in other places about these pale faces, you're going to find that they gave Israel to themselves, that they are literally trying to divide themselves amongst themselves, between themselves, but they are themselves. So the brag that we are reading is an empty brag, to say the least. And to understand, they feel there's a blessing. Perhaps they feel they own the Middle East. This is setting the stage, okay, on this very page, that the whiteness that they've infused has been sinisterly used. It truly has. And they believe this. So I'm going to keep reading this because I like this. Remember, don't get offended. When Santa Anna marched into Texas with the aims to kill all the white gringos in the land, his well-trained and supplied army of 1,300 was defeated by 600 volunteers under General Sam Houston in a battle that lasted only 20 minutes. During the Mexican War of 1847, Santa Anna sent 20,000 troops to destroy the American forces under General Zachary Taylor. But Taylor, with an army 1/4 the size of Santa Anna's, drove the Mexicans back in the hotly contested Battle of Buena Vista. Santa Anna retreated southward to defend Mexico City with a force of 30,000 soldiers. But General Winfield Scott, with an army of about 10,000, entered the Mexican capital, subdued its forces, and raised the flag over the palace of the Montezumas. Listen to this. The colored race, listen to this one, was forced to cede half of its territory, including California, Arizona, Texas, and New Mexico, into the hands of the white race. And listen to what it says. This was fulfilled, the promises to Jacob and Israel. Now, again, they apply in this book, and remember, beforehand, I did not look. All of the blessings that apply to us, they try to apply to them. And thus, we're going to look into this deeply because I can imagine how this ends. And 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 shall put 10,000 to flight, and your enemies shall fall before you by the sword. And somehow they think that this applies to them. Good Lord. History is full of many instances where, look at that, the colored races could not stand up against God's Israel people. Now, understand the replacement theory that they have going all the way back to these Anglo-Saxons who believe, yes, that they are in fact true Israel. So now we understand where Mr. Weitzel is coming from, Mr. Weisel is coming from. Though a Jew, more likely he is a converted Christian and still believes that all applies to Caucasians and white skin, where we have read and understand that white skin descends from the Neanderthal man. That 2% within each of these Europeans is what we can attribute to the lightness of their skin and the straightening of their hair. And if you don't believe me, just check out a few shows, because there it is right there. But I'm not gonna not read what I see. I think it's important for us to understand where these folks are coming from. So let's see. So why? Because God had given them dominion over other peoples. From Adam to Seth to Noah to Abraham to Jacob, the birthright included the right to govern or rule. Now we see the inside of these people and why they're such a fool. While the Israel, listen, they call Israel white nations. Israel, they call white nations, were to have this right of dominion. It was conditional on Israel abiding God's law. If that race departs too far from God's law, then they try to apply the curses to themselves as well. The Lord shall cause you to be smitten before your enemies. The stranger alien that is among you shall get up above you very high, and you shall come down very low. He shall lend to you, and you shall not lend to him. He shall be the head, and you shall be the tail. The heathen races, knowing that this is the relationship God has with Jacob, Israel, have often attempted to use it to their advantage and gain dominion over Israel. This they call themselves. Imagine white people considering themselves Israel. This is the poison mixed in with the cure. I mean, it's like flowers somehow integrated with manure. This is why these people are in the mental frame they are in right now. They somehow believe that it's not their sin. They believe that everyone else is a heathen, and they, white people, are somehow Israel. This is an interesting deal. Let's continue. I'm gonna keep reading it. So the heathen races, knowing this, read that. Thus God told us not to allow the heathen in our land to make covenants with them. So now we see the fear. Let's continue. When Esau learned that Jacob had acquired the blessing of the birthright, he mourned and begged Isaac, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" Isaac answered Esau, saying that Jacob had received the blessing, making him thy lord or master over Esau. But Esau persisted and asked, "Have you but one blessing for me?" In what can be construed as a type of blessing and prophecy, Isaac stated to Esau regarding his fate, "And by thy sword shall you live, and you shall serve your brother Jacob. And it shall come to pass when you shall have the dominion, that you shall break his yoke from off your neck." The words "have dominion" used here is in some versions translated as become restless or grow restive. But this explains only part of what is meant here. The Hebrew word used here is rued, Strong's number 7300, and means to ramble or tramp about, be free, discontent, disconsolate, have the dominion, and be lord, mourn, and rule. So let's pause for a moment because I think this is important. Remember that these people have deceived themselves. They have told a story from the viewpoint of giving them the glory, as opposed to those of us who have been through the real gory details of these oppressors. And it just seems amazing that they've taken and put upon themselves all the things that we are to experience. But looking through this gives you insight into their thinking. So I think there's going to be a lot of connective tissue linking. Let's try this out. All right, so this verse is thus saying that there will come a time when Esau will be unhappy with the yoke of Jacob about him and will ramble and tramp about until he gains the position of rule or domination. Only then will Esau be satisfied. Thus, although Esau was assigned to be a servant of Jacob, there would be a time when Esau would gain dominion over Jacob and break the yoke of Jacob off his neck. Now, keep in mind, these folks claim they're Jacob. The folks that we're talking about claim to be Jacob. The Caucasians in this country and in the Anglo-Saxon European English land, if you will, Britain, the king himself associates himself with Jacob and the land of Israel. So I don't want there to be any misconception about what I'm reading. This stems from how much these white folks be needing. That's for real. All right, so did the Edomites ever have dominion over the Israelites in Bible history? No, not once did this ever occur. Therefore, we must look to more recent times to find the fulfillment of this prophecy. This dominion of Esau, through his wrestling free of the yoke of dominion of Jacob, is being fulfilled through the control of stranglehold the Jews have gained over the white race. My goodness. With two peoples that are so opposite in character as Jacob, who again he claims to be the white race, and Esau, who again he claims to be the Jews, do you understand how confused these people are and why they have to lose? One must predominate over the other. They can never have mutual agreement or equal status. If the laws, religion, government, and morals that are characteristic of Jacob are followed in the land, then those of Esau are rejected. Esau will, by the nature of his character, be under the subjection of Jacob. And so it was with the Jews in much of Europe, of European and American history. The Jews, this is what he is saying, because of their contrasting customs and religions, were under specific regulations in white Christian nations. As one history book illustrates, there, the Jews' religion set them apart from the rest of the population of the country. The whole of ordinary life was conducted on the supposition that men were members of the same religious body. Now, the Jews did not fit into this framework, and so had to live a life apart. They were allowed to live only in certain wards of the larger towns, which are known as Jewries. They were required also to wear a special dress or a badge of yellow cloth on the breast. They were considered to be living in the country not by common right, but by special consent of the king and under his protection. They were subject, therefore, not to the common law, but to special regulations made for them by the king or his officer. Now, this is very important. And let me lay the foundation of this book and this publication and understand it wasn't written for the Negro nation. It is interesting that throughout history, they have taken all that belongs to Negroes and applied it to themselves. This is no different. But it does give an insight into why they treat one another the way they do and why the current circumstances are the way they are. If they make it all about them and about no one else, well, we're going to see how this ends, and I don't think it'll end well. But as we go through this book, it's interesting to take a look at exactly what they consider each other to be, and the fact that they don't take into consideration you and me. It's all about them. So we'll continue this. I want to see how it ends. Such was the case regarding the status of the Jew in much of Europe, where they were subject to the rule of the white race. In early American, Jews could not vote, hold public office, be a witness in court, and were socially regarded as a subordinate class of persons. So to look at the parallels between how they subjugate Negroes in that same reference, they subjugate one another before even enslaving us in full. It was almost like a practice run against these folks. Interesting. Due to their contrasting traits, when the white race that he calls Jacob governs, the Jew, which he calls Esau, will always be in a subservient position. Do you understand how they fooled themselves? They are Esau. Very interesting. We are Jacob, and their time is nearly done. Very interesting. I wonder how they consider what the Bible says about their run. All of history verifies this. No, it does not. But in a white Christian nation, the Jew will always be the tail. Interesting. They lie without fail. Historical rule of the white race was the yoke of Jacob on Esau's neck, which Esau was prophesied to break someday. And this yoke could only be broken by Esau gaining the dominion or rule. This is what they teach one another. This is interesting. For Esau to rule or have the dominion in the nation over Jacob's descendants, he must establish his principles of law and government. He calls this socialism, his religion, Judaism, and his code of morals, the Talmudic ethics. He must have his method of economics established, credit, usury, as well as his way of life, a Judaic society, thus bringing about the destruction of white rule and society. So, in essence, what this book is a book that extols white rule and claiming to be Jacob, which can easily be disproved. Their history and genetics prove who they are. And this interesting publication takes it way too far, but I just like reading it. It's interesting. This is going to be interesting. So the day the Jews was first admitted to civil rights, the Christian state was in danger. The entrance of the Jew into white society marked the destruction of the state, meaning by state, the Christian state. This is what these people believe. Thus, if the ideals, values, laws, and religions of Esau, Edom, Jews, becomes predominant in the land, then the white Christian society will die and its people will be in subjection to the Jew and his ways. So in actuality, they've been fearful all of their days. They've been afraid of each other. They've been afraid of us. It's very, very interesting. In the past 200 years, Esau, who they claim to be Jews, which is interesting, and they claim Jacob to be themselves, Esau has gradually broken the yoke or rule of the white race in such areas by becoming predominant in them. And Henry Ford, their chief anti-Semite, it's true that there is a distinct Jewish idea in business and professional life which has eaten away the traditional principles of honor on which, listen to that, Anglo-Saxon life was erected. Interesting. Every Jew knows that every non-Jew knows it. It is true that beneath all the network of trivializing influences in literature, art, politics, economics, fashion, and sport is Jewish influence controlled by Jewish groups. Their Orientalism has served as a subtle poison to dry up the sound serum of Anglo-Saxon morality on which this country thrived in its formative years. Folks, this publication, and again, we need to have a serious investigation into the mentality of our oppressors. And this gives you keen insight into what they think of themselves. I gotta tell you, I did not know that this was coming. This came out left. I don't want anybody to be upset or bereft. It is a book written by a gentleman who obviously is a converted Christian from Jew. Let's see what else he's going to say. Economic control, the history of money and monetary control is a history of freedom and slavery. Thus, this is to say economic bondage or economic freedom. Jews have long been adept at the primary means for putting other people under economic bondage via banking, money lending, and usury. Again, the poison mixed with the cure. The use and control of usury, the loaning of money at interest, is a powerful tool for gaining financial dominion over others. Not only is the borrower servant to the lender because of the debt he owes, but he must also pay more than what he borrowed. By making one's ability to pay off a debt more difficult, the lender can take possession of property put up as security. Again, eat the meat, spit out the bone. Now, on the left hand of the page, we saw the lie. But on the right hand of the page, let's see what catches our eye. The Jewish Talmud allows the use of usury by recognizing several different modes of obtaining increase or interest for money loan. The Bible, however, prohibits any and all increase, interest, or gain when there is a loan of money, food, or anything. Jews follow not the Bible, but the Talmud as their code to live by. The Jewish writer Samuel Roth explains the Jew's economic role as follows. We see the Jew when in business as promoter, moneylender, salesman par excellence, the author and chief instigator of a system of credit by which a nationwide usury rises like a golem, a created monster with a million hands and a million throats to choke the honor and the freedom of movement of hard-working people. Wow. Wow, I didn't say that, they wrote it. Jews became moneylenders in most of Europe, lending to nations, princes, merchants, and farmers, any that would need money. Word Jew became synonymous with money lending and usury. The real key to the Jews' economic rule over nations and the making of usury and credit more effective is their international banking dynasty. Listen carefully. This scheme began in England when the Jews led by Rabbi Manasseh ben Israel were allowed to return to that nation in 1657 by conspiring with Oliver Cromwell. With their foot in the door, the international Jews approached William of Orange and promised to help place him on the throne of England in exchange for helping them secure a charter to establish a Bank of England. A Jew named Jacob Henriquez was instrumental in this endeavor. William and Mary accepted the crown in 1689, but to justify the bank charter, wars between France and England were now instigated. The constant wars which followed William's accession had compelled the king to borrow large sums from the London merchants, Jews. Out of these loans sprang first the national debt, which was destined to grow eventually by leaps and bounds, from less than £1 million up to so many 100 million that all thought of ever paying it is now given up. The second result was the organization of a company for the management of this colossal debt, the Bank of England. Jewish merchants secured the bank charter in 1694. From that moment on, Esau-Edom had financial dominion over all of Britain. Now, let me pause again. So, if you don't read everything, you don't take it all in, if you stop because there's something you disagree with, you may miss a point. Now, yesterday, we went over chapter 5 of this publication, and in no circumstance did we ever surmise that they considered themselves Jacob and they considered Esau to be the Jews that they exposed and talked about at length. So continuing through this publication, I think, is vital. It gives us insight into not just what they think of Jews, and they bring out points about these individuals that are true, but also they give insight into their own self-assessment and thought of themselves. We got to pay particular attention to that, because that self-thought is at the heart of the treatment of Negroes into this country. So don't be offended by what they say. Just remember, eat the meat, spit out the bone. We're here to get the truth. Leave the rest alone. All right, so as directors of the bank, they could regulate the gold standard, consolidate the national debt, and even impose direct taxation on the people as a means to secure loans. With control over this bank, Jews would create wars, business panics, and political upheavals that would affect the entire world. The existence of today's banking system, that is, the taking of money on deposit and loaning it out at interest, actually gave rise in modern times through the endeavors of the Jewish Rothschild family. Now, we're going to get some meat here. The financial career of the Rothschilds is the key to the history of Jewish banking in the 19th century. The plan adopted by him of establishing branches in the more important European capitals, over which he placed his sons, was followed by other Jewish banking houses. The influence of Jews on banking was due to the preliminary advantage given to them by their international position. Other central banks were established in Europe, which would also branch out their operations. Warburg founded a bank in Hamburg in 1798. The Jewish bankers played an important part in the development of joint stock banks. Ludwig Bamberger and Hermann Marcuse were among the founders of the Deutsche Bank. Among other important Jewish banks was the Banque de Paris. Jewish bankers played a leading part in the foundation of the Banque Commerciale Italiana and the Credito Italiano. Leading private banks in Hungary were of Jewish origin. The Jewish objective was to make all money, loans, credit, and financial transactions worldwide become subject to their centralized control. Let me pause there. So, again, if I took offense or took personally their misnaming of themselves and others and not read through, we would not find out this information, which is vital. Very, very good information to have. So we're going to continue to read through. Esau, or the Jews, crowning achievement in gaining financial dominion over what they think themselves to be Jacob, occurred with the establishment of the Federal Reserve Act, which was signed by the Zionist stooge, oh, he's getting personal now, Woodrow Wilson, on December 23rd, 1913. The chief architect of this plan was the Edomite Jew, Paul Warburg of Kuhn, Loeb and Company. The legislation created a corporation, the Federal Reserve Bank, whose stock is owned or controlled by Jewish banking firms. Now, again, he calls Edomite Jews. They're talking about themselves, amongst themselves, with themselves. It's almost a mental tick. You know, they've got themselves so convinced that it's become a popular trick. I like that. That's interesting. With the Federal Reserve System, the Edomites have the ability, or the Jews, the Jewish guys, have the ability to create their own money, Federal Reserve notes and bank book entries. That's what they're doing today. Janet Yellen is in charge of the Federal Reserve, folks. You need to look at the names of all the people that not only run this country and government, powerful entities, but also examine the fact that they have dual citizenship. For some reason, they got to be citizens of the United States. They got to be citizens of the state of Israel. And they're all Edom, Esau. Even the ones that don't like them are Edom and Esau, which is interesting, but let's move on. Right? Interesting. So, what with the Federal Reserve System, the Jews have the ability to create their own money, like we said that, merely loaning it out into the circulation, and thus can manipulate loans and interest rates. And here we go. The white people of America, who are also Edomites and Esau, but okay, are now subject to their new Edomite masters. You're okay. Who created their money, allowing them to buy and sell with it, but monitors how much they receive and taxes them for the privilege of that use. The IRS is but a collection agency of he's getting real personal, isn't he? Of the Edomite Federal Reserve System and banking system. But again, Janet Yellen is in charge. If some alien force wished to covertly take over a nation, no surer method would be devised than by supplanting the nation's money with their own. As President James Garfield said, whoever controls the volume of money in any country is absolute master of all industry and commerce. This is the situation that exists with the Federal Reserve Bank. The descendants of who they call the Jews have truly brought about the mark of the beast, so that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark. No one in the nation can buy or sell unless they use, as they say, Federal Reserve notes. After the Jews established their private banks in the individual nations, their next step was to solidify their financial control in the international level, at the level of international. At the close of World War II, certain Jews spearheaded the Bretton Woods Conference in New Hampshire. The Articles of Agreement proposed for the establishment of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and a World Bank. This agreement was based on the plans of the Jewish economist Harry Dexter White. Interesting. Mr. White, a U.S. economist born in Boston, Massachusetts, was made director of monetary research. His monetary proposals were accepted as the basis for the Bretton Woods Conference, attended by representatives of 44 nations. Now listen carefully, folks. Jews have always controlled the operations of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. Through them, interest rates, loans, currency values, and international trade practices are regulated, making the economic activities of every nation subject to the Jew by way of these financial devices. Their objective of a new international economic order was fulfilled with these international devices. Thus, Esau now has economic dominion over the folks that they considered Jacob like never before. Now, let me say this to you. In this publication, this man, Mr. Weisman, believes that Jacob are white people. Fine. I'm not going to argue with him because he's dead and, well, it's a book. But the information that he brings out regarding Jews is accurate. And I got to say as well, there is nothing more than Jews want than to consider anyone but Negroes to be Jacob. So can you imagine how satisfied they are with this particular publication exclaiming up and down that Jacob is in fact Caucasians related to Jews and themselves, all Neanderthals, all Europeans, but it serves a purpose in that it deflects the truth and supplants a lie that now is repeated in this booklet. And again, if we look at chapter 5, what we did yesterday, nowhere in that chapter does this writer allude that Jacob is somehow white Europeans that are Anglo-Saxons and that Jews are somehow separate and apart from these people. Though they have a slight differentiation, Anglo-Saxons and the folks they're calling Jews are the exact same people. They all hail from the Caucasus Mountains. Okay, Indo-Europeans, they are not of Shem. And so when he calls himself Jacob, when he calls white America Jacob, of course, all of us feel the insult of that offense. We understand, we know the lie embedded in the minds of these people, but now we understand. Consider how many of them think that in this land. Consider how many white people walk about thinking that they are part of Israel. This is not something that's not commonly talked about. But obviously, since the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, There's been a few of them that has thought that Jacob, clearly a descendant of Shem, clearly of Negro descent, clearly a person of hue, they somehow believe that the transfer of being Jacob and that being a person of color is somehow a European descendant of Japheth. And of course, they don't go into the depth of that knowledge in this book. They foment the lie while exposing some truth. That's the reason I think this publication was well worth a read. So we're going to stop there. I do appreciate your time, and I've got to get on with my day and end this rhyme. But we learned a lot today, folks. We know what they think of themselves, and they hide it quite well. I was taken aback by the contents of this book and the explanation that they are somehow the Israelite nation. That we know is a lie, but hey, damn good try. All right, that's it. I got to go. All right, folks, that's the show. I do appreciate your time. And look, folks, wait patiently on the Creator. All right? He's on the way. There will be, I think there's not going to be any stopping what's going on that we see. Not on the part of these humans. I think they're going to go full bore into World War III. But we should not be affected by anything they do. We're not connected. That's their show. Let them go. But I leave you with this. If you are interested in removing all the caucastic traces, get that goddamned grin off your faces. Yeah, I tried something new. I figured it'd work. It does. Have a good day.